Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay. I love the idea. So thank you for presenting. It's exciting to see. When I read some of your material, and I noticed that you're initially staffing through volunteers. Will it always be through volunteers over time? Or do you plan to kind of embed it in the process into some of the healthcare delivery that's happening with existing professionals?
So initially, we have kind of identified, that a lot of students in college and high school alike kind of jump on the opportunity to interact with patients and stuff like that. And I actually had reached out to some of the people in my high school and our high school to identify if any of these students would be interested in this program. And they were very, very excited about it, and they were willing to learn, some of these magic tricks that we wanted to implement into this system. And because this is a hobby that a lot of us kind of pick up in these years. And initially, I think we're just going to stick with these volunteer programs. And if this seems to be a big hit, and these hospitals and nursing homes are really liking our idea, then we can plan to pursue it into a more kind of structured program in which we can obtain more funding and eventually make an actual team that can be kind of sort of a part-time job or something like that, to actually introduce these into hospitals. Because we also know that in hospitals it is hard to kind of often let volunteers go into patient rooms. It requires a lot of certification, so we understand that that's going to be a barrier that potentially we can work towards in the future.
Thank you.
Other questions?
So I'll come up with a question. I have a few questions, but I'll start with one. I think that I might need a little bit better explanation as to how this helps the patients to communicate better along these lines. Even though I'm really excited to hear about your program. I think it's awesome to be thinking of thinking outside the box, and this sounds like you're thinking outside the box. And I just think it's wonderful. And then along those same lines, I'm curious how you came up with the numbers of how you're saving so many dollars, which is fabulous. But I'm curious about that.
I can start with it, and I hope people can continue on it. But basically, we have a lot of. I'm gonna go off basically part of the question where you said about the numbers, how we got that. So we have a lot of family friends who are like personally working in like hospitals or their own private clinics, and we've seen that basically that communication gap, and we've seen like they've been basically hiring interpreters or hiring people that can basically speak the same language as one of the patients or something. But like usually nowadays we like on a resume we put like every single language we know, and sometimes we go even like basically above and beyond to add that, right? So we just through that basically experience, we added the numbers up, and through research online as well, what hospitals spend, and a lot of the private hospitals here nearby in our county, in our city, in Worcester, of course. We kind of did our research off of that as well. I believe that was your question. I might be forgetting one of the part of the question.
I can add on to that because I know you're trying to think more about the money wise, and has Horace said how many interpreters and different kind of programs that are out there right now, they cost a lot of money, and many people they can't afford that kind of money to get an interpreter. So at that point, it's like there's a big language barrier. But in this case, it's not as expensive. As we said, we're going to create more volunteer based initially. We're going to create more volunteer based, as Nahal said before, and we're going to create more of a volunteer base in the beginning. It's going to help out a lot. And then as we move forward with getting more income, and with this income we can use to make it cheaper to implement this system inside the caregiver, going to be much cheaper than getting an interpreter, which comes through insurance and everything else is involved. Where in this case, it's going to be us and people specifically to help out in this very scenario, instead of getting actual like insurance involved and everything involved in this very scenario. And also the connection part, as Horace mentioned before, how we had multiple connections around and see. So we visualize everything beforehand too, about how the nursing homes or hospitals work in general too.
And yeah, I know you were asking about how this is actually going to benefit caregivers or patients in hospitals, but just we could take an example. Say there's like a little kid who has like some procedure or something coming up, and I know for a lot of procedures you need to drink a certain amount of water for that. So say we have a card and within our deck that says it's like a water card or something like that. We can set up a magic trick from one of the volunteers or professionals that we have hired, and we can force, basically not like force the kid, but in an interactive way, force them to drink the water that they need to before their procedure, something like that.
For example, if we're performing like the magic trick, we would actually have control over the 4 card, or like the 4 4 card that has 4 glasses of water on it. So essentially we tell the child, we say, pick a card, any card, and we say, whatever this card comes out to, you need to drink this X amount of water. So as a magician, we have control over that 4 card. So in the end, we're like, wow, you picked this card, you need to essentially, drink X amount of water. It's essentially an easier way to communicate the care that's going to be given to the patient in a way that's not so overwhelming in a hospital environment. Because as many of us have volunteered in nursing homes and hospitals alike, we have found that that can often be a very stressful environment when the doctor is explaining something in complex terms. So we want to create these cards that have things and medical symptoms or caregiving statements written in easier to understand terms for both pediatrics and geriatrics alike, that can both be used in an interactive manner and also kind of be explained in an easier way that's not overwhelming to the patient.
It sounds like you're pushing in a very creative manner. Thank you for the explanations.
Patty, please.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, I was wondering, I know you plan to develop cards that discuss symptoms for particular illnesses or whatever, and I'm wondering if you had considered having a health major join your team to help with that endeavor. And also, if you have tried, can you explain some of the other types of cards that you've already tried besides what you have shown us with the 2 cards that had the milk, 1 glass of milk or 2 glasses of milk?
Yeah, of course. So we had we have healthcare individuals that we've reached out to, especially in our community as well, that are doctors, and they're willing to fact check our cards before they obviously go into design. So to make sure that they're medically accurate and providing these information, easy to understand terms. So we have a lot of individuals that are willing to help us in that sense. And as well, we have some individuals who are helping us with the design aspect as well, which is why our prototype was a little bit simple right now. But we plan to, kind of gain art majors and design majors who can properly help us implement that design. And we wanted to kind of put these cards especially would be bigger, especially for geriatric patients who had trouble seeing. And, we would definitely make those onto bigger cards. And we plan to just keep the design right now as you would see a simple deck of cards, which has like an ace, a king, that type. So it's not as intimidating. Everybody's most of the time have seen a deck of cards before. So, we would plan to put information on it, such as today you will be taking X amount of medication. This is what the medication does in your body. So, you're self-aware of, what's going on and what you're taking, or this is your daily schedule for tomorrow, because a lot of, geriatric patients tend to, from the time we volunteered in nursing homes, tend to have very strict schedules of what's going to happen tomorrow, especially days following a procedure, transfer to a hospital. So definitely layouts of those plans in an easy to big understand card, because often explaining verbally kind of goes right over the head, especially with pediatric patients as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if Horace Falls or Raymond want to expand on that.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sorry, I have a question first, George. Thank
Yeah,
you.
why don't we do Susan first, as you haven't had a chance to answer a question yet, and then George will come to you.
Thank you. My main question was actually just addressed, which was that in hospitals, we are dealing with more kind of complex medical issues, more acute issues than in nursing homes. So I do think there's a differentiator there between the cards and what would be on there. And so I was asking about if you were including a graphic designer. I did see, the simplicity of the milk, but even that graphic with milk on it would not be suitable in many languages, because milk, being the identifier, is in English. And so kind of how you plan to with the graphic designer, work through some complex issues. And my second part to that as well is I see this working really well in a nursing home setting, where it's more long-term care and people there have more needs for milk and more needs for, some of their daily caregiving needs. Whereas in a hospital, it's a little bit more serious, a little bit more acute. And so kind of where you're thinking you're going to start this program, if you're trying to lead in with nursing homes or if you're trying to lead in with hospitals, because I do think they're two different products in two different markets.
All right, I'll go ahead. So, like I said before, we have, for testing purposes, basically, how everything, once an idea is out there, we first start with, some similar testing, some kind of quality assurance in a way, right? So we would probably start with like a few clinics that we have, like, that are owned by some of our family friends or community people nearby. And we would start there, and by learning from any mistakes and mishaps that we go through the whole process, right? Then finally incorporate it into hospitals, I would say, because nursing homes can also be it depends on how everything, we have a plan, but life throws its obstacles. So whatever goes through the whole process, basically, so starting from the clinics, and then from there we can move on to either nursing homes, it depends on the situation, or a hospital, whatever opportunity we can get, we'll try to seek and basically grab.
Fantastic. Okay, George, would you like to do your follow-on question, and then that should be all the time we have for Q&A.
Yeah, so my follow-on was really answered a minute ago, really to Susan's question about how can you logistically turn hospital stays, create the cards as quick and given the complexity and the shorter stays. So it was really answered.
In which case, glad it was answered. All right, in which case, Team Aces, thank you so much for your presentation. I loved it. We're really, really, really wonderful that you got to share that with us. I'm going to politely ask you to leave, very politely, just so that our judges can fill in their score sheets. But thank you very much. You did a really wonderful job, and it was a great presentation. You should be really proud.